As there are no members of the public or press here, I'm going to skip over the Chair's announcements because you all know about the emergency evacuation procedures, facilities, putting your phone to silent and the filming regulations. So, saved me 20 seconds. Right, 7 o'clock. Welcome to the March Cabinet meeting. Apologies.
Thank you. We've had apologies from Councillors Dobson, Lodge and Raven.
Thank you very much. Item 2, declarations of interest. The monitoring officer advises that I should declare the fact that I'm a county councillor, if you didn't already know. Councillor Steele? Likewise. And Councillor Massey, likewise. Thank you. As related to the item coming up on 6. And we've got more. Councillor Ely has a separate declaration.
Yes, I need to declare another registrable interest for item 10.1 as I'm a Southern Ferrers Town Councillor and I can vote and I wish to make a statement.
Right. And I need to declare an interest and I can't vote, but I should still declare the interest.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, item 3, can I sign the minutes of the 28th of January as a correct record? Thank you very much. We don't have any public questions, so we're moving rapidly on. Any questions on matters for which the Cabinet is responsible from other members? Gosh. There we go. You sure, Richard? Are you absolutely sure? Won't want to encourage you. Right, I haven't. Well, I think, yeah, we've got 4 items. Even if we speak for 2 minutes on each, it will be 8 minutes. But anyway. Right, so moving swiftly on, 6.1. So the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, you will recall that the previous government created this fund to partially replace the funds that we used to get from the European Union. There is going to be a small amount of money for the coming year, for the next year, so we have some proposals to put to you. As Councillor Simon Goldman is our Cabinet Deputy for the Economy and Small Business, I'll ask him. I've just renamed you, haven't I? Ask Councillor Goldman to present the report.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, there's really not a lot more to say than what you've just said. The report says it all. To date, we've had 1.1 million from the government, which has been spent on various things around the city, just hoping to strengthen the community and supporting businesses. And we've got another £384,000 this year. And in the appendix, you can see where we're proposing to put that money. There was a slight error in a green paper did go out earlier, just on the numbers. That's all I have to say, really.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor Highland.
I knew I'd come up with one. Thank you. I was looking at the delivery programme that we've got before us tonight on page 18 of the 48-page report that you've got. In there I noticed the skills support is receiving 0 public funds, whilst there are some profit organisations being subsidised with a percentage of this year's UK SPF. I know particularly the theatre outreach work has been allocated £30,000 capital expenditure as a priority above skills. So my question really is, can you explain the logic behind this decision?
There's money that's been put into NEEB, and within NEEB there's various training that's going on within that, but I will refer to Jen. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, as Councillor Goldman alluded to, whilst there isn't funding specifically allocated against the skills sub-themes, it is captured within some of the other initiatives. So the employability items above that, they both focus heavily on skills, but they fit better within that sub-theme. Again, with business support as well, there are items within that specifically upskills employees, but we felt that fit better with business support rather specifically under the skills agenda. We we don't put anything against the essential skills and employment-related skills necessarily, because Essex County Council do pick up on a lot of that, and we feel that under our different areas like business support, we can capture both areas, and it's better aligned within those sub-themes.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things I was looking at is really how is that money distributed across different elements. So when I look at some of these things here, active health coordinator, for example, is that a CCC employee that you're planning to bring in? And it would be good if on this report we could see what is CCC keeping for themselves and what are they giving out to others. Because if I look through the list of items, there seems quite a lot that we are almost keeping the money ourselves, funding a few things that we can't due to our budget constraints, and this report doesn't give that visibility. So future reports, perhaps, could we? And the other point is, it seems city-centric, a lot of these roles, I'm guessing, just looking at it. And again, our residents out in the sticks are probably not seeing some of this prosperity fund, and perhaps, again, you could show that in that report, whether it is city-centric or other people's are gaining from it, despite the fund going into the city and we all gaining from it in some respects.
There is a different grant for rural donation. Yeah.
Other recommendations in the report? Agreed? Thank you very much. Right, moving on to 6.2. So this is quite a chunky report. We had an all-member briefing on devolution and LGR just over a week ago. This report gives you the letter which we all leaders and chief executives received on the 5th of February from the Minister, which is our formal invitation to submit a reorganisation proposal. This paper is about LGR rather than devolution, which is a separate consultation is underway at the moment. So there's the letter, and then quite importantly is the pages which start, if you're looking at just that item, it's on 9, but it's titled Schedule, Guidance from the Secretary of State for Proposals, and the criteria which any bid is expected to meet. So there's a couple of pages which set that out, and then there's a timetable page which, as I think you know, we have to submit a letter by the 21st of March for interim proposals, and then a final worked up proposal by the 26th of September. And then after that, you've got the collective expression of interest from the 15 council leaders and the PFCC, which starts on page 13, if you're just reading it as a separate item, with the map. So that goes through basically answering the questions in a slightly different order to the Minister put them, because we like to be different. But there's a bit of narrative, and then describes the structure, sets out the structure, and sets out how we're working across Essex to refine these proposals, and how we intend to consult the public. And section 3 talks about potential configuration and how we might, the issues that we need to take into account to bring together those proposals, to assess the options. Section 4 is about how it will link up with devolution, the mayoral combined authority agenda, which is now called GECA, Greater Essex County Combined Authority, which is not a lizard-like creature. And then section 5 talks about costs, and I don't think we should underestimate quite how much it will cost. We should be under no illusions that reorganisation will cost a lot of money. We all know, in whatever organisation you're involved in, parish council, church, community association, school, whatever, if you have a major structural change, there are costs, in unquantifiable costs of disruption, whilst you go through the reorganisation process and their actual costs of staffing changes. And at senior director level at all councils, there will be substantial costs of change. And so I don't think we should underestimate that. And that's one of the points that we need to make clearly to the government, that this is going to cost millions, potentially £100 million across Essex to reorganise local councils. The government talks about there being savings. The evidence for that is limited, and even the most optimistic assumption makes a saving of 0.4% of turnover, which we're making bigger savings than that every year for the last 5 years. So that's sort of when in section 6, what support do we look for from the government? And capacity funding support is one of our requests. That's quite a chunky reply. It's currently supported by all 16 leaders and will be submitted. So, as it says in the letter, 10 of the 15 council leaders have agreed to support a proposal for 5 unitary authorities, and the other 5 have not yet expressed a firm opinion. So, Chelmsford, myself that is, and that's why I intend to, it will say in our submission, Chelmsford, Colchester, Rochford, Brentwood, Uttlesford, Tendring, Castle Point, and which one have I? Malden, and Basildon, and Southend are the 10 that are supporting the 5 unitary model proposal. Councillor Whitehead, I don't know if you're going to look, you sent me an email earlier, which I haven't replied to, I'm sorry, and you mentioned that there was an article in various journals over the last few days about the costs issue. And as I said, that's just a rehash of the numbers which we had 4 years ago from Price Waterhouse. And I think it's deeply misleading to talk about saving billions of pounds, because the saving figure they talk about is 1.8 billion spread over 5 years, which is 380 million a year, divided by 21 county councils, is a very small sum of money. It's 17 million pounds in Essex, which, as I said, is less than 0.4% of turnover. So loose change, really. And that does not sound flippant, but given that we spend 4.2 billion pounds collectively, it's rather small. So that is where we are now. There is a broad consensus to submit that letter, and so that will go in before the government's deadline on the 21st. So, Councillor Jeeps.
In the presentations, of many of which I've seen, I haven't gone to all of them, but they seem to indicate no money would be made available. Is there a softening of that approach now, given the costs that are involved?
Well, I hope so. They've talked about making capacity funding available for setting up the combined authority of maybe £20 million has been suggested. But whether that can be sort of spread around to councils as well, that would be certainly helpful if it could be. Obviously, the devolution proposals on a slightly quicker timescale, and they want to get the combined authority set up sort of by the end of this calendar year. But it's one of the things which we need to. So I'm going to the District Council Network Conference on Thursday and hoping to then or soon to meet with the Minister. I've asked for those of us district leaders who are in reorganisation areas if we can have a meeting, because most of the meetings that have been had to date are only been with the County Council and the 2 unitary authorities, and not involving any of the district leaders at all, which I think is disappointing. But so I want to make that point amongst many others in that section 6. Yeah, go on.
And then there's the issue of Thurrock.
Yes.
I mean, it is such a big issue, and
yes,
it talks in the document about not disadvantaging and all
yeah.
this sort of thing, but there is no advantage in pairing with somebody with that amount of debt, is there?
No, indeed. I mean, it's not just so much an elephant, it's a great big woolly hairy mammoth that's in the room that nobody wants to talk about. What we've done at Essex Leaders and Chief Executives, we've set up 4 working groups to look at different aspects of the putting together the next proposal, and one of those is about finance and sustainability, obviously. Another one is about the links with devolution. The one that I'm on is about community identity. So our chief executive is on holiday this week, so Nick is leading on the finance work stream. So there are on those 4 working groups, there's 4 chief executives and 4 leaders on each of those working groups from different authorities. So, and we're not on the, so Nick's on the finance one and I'm on the community identity one. So we don't want to be on the same. So Nick has been talking to the other finance officers about how that might be addressed, because it's the, another metaphor, it's the unexploded bomb that no one wants to approach. Nick has suggested that, you know, the government doesn't want to do anything, but of course we don't want to take responsibility for it either. So there needs to be some kind of solution, and I think the most likely outcome is some kind of very, very long-term loan. But obviously, when I say we, whatever unitary authority we end up in, we don't want, you know, we don't want Chelmsford residents to be paying for Thurrock's mistakes. The short answer is nobody knows, but everybody knows it's an issue, and it's not just for Thurrock. I mean, Surrey collectively has £5 billion of debt across all the districts in Surrey. So actually, theirs is an even bigger problem. But yeah, it's not going to get ignored. Any other questions? Richard Highlands.
Thank you, Joe. Just referencing page 21 of the 48-page pack. You mentioned cross-party meetings that we started to have. Are they still going to be pre-decision making and include full picture reports? And will there be any impact analysis on the LGR options? And then if I make a reference to page 40 or 48, there's reference to a single evidence base. Where is that held and how robust is the data? And then referencing page 41 or 48 is a suggestion. And maybe you can provide this suggestion to the Minister when you see him. Why not lift the budgets out of the council for adult and children care services into the NHS or some other supranational structure and not kill our councils?
Thank you for those. So on the subject of cross-party, our monitoring officer jumped for joy when I suggested that we needed a working group on local democracy, as I'm sure you won't be surprised to learn. So we will convene one before too long, which will be cross-party within this council. At the moment, across Essex, we have a fairly good political balance across the leaders of the different councils as well, because we have 4 Liberal Democrats, 4 Independents, 3 Conservative and 3 Labour. So I think that on that we've got that kind of all bases covered in that regard. In terms of data, we mentioned, Nick talked through the Grant Thornton report that was being commissioned, and that's available, but only within, I think you've been sent a copy? Yeah. So it didn't, someone said, are you surprised? Well, I said, you ask a collection of accountants to put together some figures. It's just a collection of figures. It doesn't have a great deal of insights or analysis in it. It just says, well, some authorities will be bigger than others. Some populations will be bigger than others. Some will have bigger budgets than others. And you think, well, yes, I knew that before we paid you a large sum of money to come up with the report. But there's a lot of data in there. And I think even at 5 unitary authorities, they'd all be quite large compared to current unitary authorities. And I think at 5, they would actually have the scale and capacity to address the issues, but not to be so big that they're not local government. They will all be over 330,000 population, even at their kick-off, and one of them will be over 500,000. So I think even if we have 5, the sustainability issue case is already fairly well made, I think. But that is something which we need to work up in more detail as we get to the September deadline. On your so I think that covers your question about data and about budgets. On your suggestion about adult social care, well, yes, but that would require a whole complete different reorganisation. So personally, and from the Liberal Democrat point of view, we've said for years that social care and health should be merged, because it is ridiculous that one is funded on the basis of need, and you have to pay or you don't pay based on your own ability to pay, it's just social care, and NHS isn't. And it is another slightly smaller elephant in the room in terms of the costs of adults and children's. Obviously, various people have raised these questions, but it's very clear that unless there was some kind of legal change, that's not going to happen. So Northamptonshire was an exception, that they set up a Northamptonshire Care Trust when they reorganised, because the county council was broke, and they set up a separate adult social care trust. The Essex County Council outsources 70% of its expenditure to a vast array of different external providers, and so that is going to take a very long time, like 7 to 10 years, for those contracts to all come up for expiry and renewal. And so what my best guess is that, so the one that we all like to criticise the most, Ringway Jacobs, their contract expires on the 31st of March 2027, which is quite timely actually. But my best guess would be that if we had 5 unitary authorities and 5 cabinet members for highways, that they'd have to sit in joint oversight of the Ringway Jacobs contract until such time as it was expired and renegotiated, and the same would apply to the Bernardo's Virgin Care 0 to 19 service, for example. So it's going to be a long time before we get a complete disaggregation anyway. So there will be a degree of cross-county cooperation essential anyway. And then there's a separate issue about working with the health service, where we have a rather complicated health ICS footprint, which also the government has said they will consider adjusting to make sure that it does align with local government, so I hope they do. Right, Councillor Whitehead, yeah.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I did refer to the article which suggested government was still keen to have larger rather than smaller. I mean, I'm not against the 5, no, I'm not suggesting anything should change, really, but they were suggesting there would be more savings. But of course, we all know there will be no savings, and there'll be less costs, perhaps, or whatever it will end up being. So the 5 dissidents or undecided at the moment, then why are they dissident and undecided, perhaps? That's one question. Why the hell are we using Greater Essex at all? Because, because if we, let's say we start north, middle and south, as it were, so it would be North Essex, Greater Essex, Essex, I mean, it'd be nonsense. And the public clearly have no knowledge of that, really. Can we not just put that out of everybody's mind when we send our submission in and not use the word greater? Because it's utter rubbish, isn't it? We're trying to get the public involved, and they'll say, well, what does that mean, Greater Essex? And of course, it means nothing, does it? So that's the case. Yeah, the 5 option, as I say, it would be useful to have the answer to that one. So I stop for a moment.
So I agree with you on Greater Essex. I mean, some people say Greater Essex should include the 5 East London boroughs, which used to be in Essex, and some, you know. So yeah, personally, I just think it should be the Essex Combined Authority. But Southend and Thurrock always get a bit grumpy if you don't mention them. But, well, yes, I tend to agree with you. On the 5 who haven't yet signed up, so that's the County Council, Epping Forest, Harlow, Braintree, and Thurrock abstained. So I think maybe Mike or Bob have an insight into Councillor Bentley's mind, because I don't. He's a bit of a puzzle. There is a debate about whether size matters, famous phrase, and whether larger means more efficient, and I don't think there is any evidence for that. Personally, I think you may share this, Essex County Council is so large that it's not very transparent at the moment, and that something like Somerset, which is 620, I think, 640,000, and is huge, and North Yorkshire is ridiculously big, in my view, both in acreage and population. So, interestingly, there was a note from Labour HQ to Labour leaders, which said, on the subject of size, whilst the guidance states that new councils should aim for this, it is only a guiding principle. Many areas will have strong reasons to propose new councils with much lower populations as a result of local geography, identity, housing growth, history and any other considerations. And it points out that the average size of existing unitary councils in England is around 290,000. The largest local authority in the country has had a Section 114 notice. The largest London borough has had a Section 114 notice. Rutland, which is the smallest unitary authority, had a very good CQC report. So there are bad and good amongst small and large. And I think that it's down principally to the leadership of that authority as to whether it's well run, not necessarily the size. And I think, like with our Corporate Peer Challenge report, that said that very clearly. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Councillor Masses wants to have some insight on the subject. Well, yes, he has said that, and that's actually a bit of a meaningless. As I said in answer to Richard, Councillor Massey said that Councillor Bentley believes it should be driven by the data. And as I said earlier, the data in that Grant Thornton report doesn't actually tell us very much. As I said, it tells us, some will be larger and some will be smaller. It tells us what the population is. We know all of those kind of things. The children in care, we know that there's X thousand children in care in Chelmsford and Basildon and Colchester. We know and older people, we know, that's a fact. And they will still be there, whatever their council is called in future. Anyway, this obviously is going to rumble on for a while. I'm hoping that we can start work sooner rather than later on those working groups to get the full business case worked up well before the 26th of September deadline, because this is causing, I said this the other day, this is causing uncertainty. There are going to be fewer of us, even if we put, there will be fewer seats for councillors at the next election, and it's also uncertainty for officers. And the best way we can protect our public services, which is what it should be about, is reducing the uncertainty and getting on with it, I think. So which is why it's important that those districts which are likely to be merged end up having conversations sooner rather than later. So we are having a meeting with Brentwood and Malden at the end of the month, and I will be suggesting that we have a cross-party, cross-council setup as a sort of some kind of steering group as we get so that we start having the conversation. So, for example, if there's a big property decision to be taken, we want to discuss that with our potential partners, but because we don't want to scupper the ship in 5 years' time. Councillor Steele.
I'm not really going to make a lot of comment because we're going to be talking about this for 3 years, and one of the strange concepts to me will be in 2 years' time, the shadow elections, and you're right. There's going to be, I don't know, half or a third of the councillors, but some of us will serve our last year knowing that we've lost an election in a year's time, and that is a really strange concept. How do you stay motivated for your last year knowing that actually you're gone in the year or not? Very strange.
That's a very fair point. In many other reorganisation areas, they have used the county council divisions as wards of the new authority. So that's what they did in Somerset. They had 62 county councillors on the old Somerset, and they made those 62 divisions into 2-member wards. So they've currently got 104 councillors on the Somerset unitary. And I think they did similar in Cumbria. That's the quickest and easiest way, because they've just had, we've had a boundary review that we've not implemented, so they've just done that. So we know that all the new divisions are the same size. So the Boundary Commission might say, well, it's quick and easy, let's do that. Let's adopt the county divisions and make them 3-member wards. And so you'd end up with, if it was 5, with 5 councils of about 50-something, which I think is a bit on the small side, because the county council is 75 and we're 57. And I think you probably need more than 50.
I mean, I know Essex County Council favour the one-member divisions, so just 3-member wards I can't say I'm particularly in favour of. So my vote would go on 1 member per division.
Yes, but I think we'd have to have a proper wholesale boundary review, and I don't think that the Local Government Boundary Commission has got the time to do a full ward review of 6 county councils within the next sort of 12 months or so. Yeah.
Unnecessary complications.
I think they'll go for the easy option, but yeah. But then one of the jobs of the new council would be to then have a proper boundary review and come up with new ward proposals for the following election. But you're absolutely right. So there will be an election in May 2027 for the Shadow Council, and if you put yourself forward and get elected to the Shadow Council, and like you and me, we're already on the county and the district, you'll then have 3 hats, or 4 hats in your case. Yes, you're right. Yes, this one was going to run and run. Right, okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, good. So as you say, I've endorsed that letter and we'll be sending off, and at Chelmsford we're supporting the option for 5. Right, so that is item 6. Don't think there's any other items. Oh, sorry, thank you, Louise. Is that report agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 7, we don't have any urgent business, and neither of those go to council today? No. Right, so we're on to the exclusion of the press and public. So we'll just switch off the feed. And